Hello and welcome to the Property Roundup here on iPropertyRadio with myself, Carol Tallon, the show where we chat to industry experts to get a view on activity on the ground and to learn about new trends emerging. Today we have some big news to share as Daft.ie joins the iPropertyRadio team on a regular basis, and we're very excited about this. Regular listeners will, of course, know how often we rely on Daft's data and report insights to help us make sense of the property market, to understand the trends that are happening in the urban and regional areas. So it's my very great pleasure to announce Daft as the new sponsor for your weekly Property Roundup. I think it's important from our point of view to point out that this move is more than just a campaign. It really is an alignment of our two brands and an agreement to collaborate and drive positive change across Ireland's property industry. And it's something at iPropertyRadio that we feel very passionately about. And here to tell us more about some of the technology innovation we can expect from the Daft team over the next year is Client Partnership Director Emmet Creighton. Emmet, you're very welcome, and I'm delighted to be that you're able to join us today. Client Partnership Director with Daft.ie. What does that mean? What does that entail?
Thanks, Carol. It's lovely to be on. I mean, I think you mentioned it in your intro. It's to drive positive change in the industry. Okay, so for many years, Daft and estate agents, they're both a critical part of the property infrastructure in Ireland. For the last number of years, Daft has grown really, really fast, and we may have lost touch with some of our clients. And what we're trying to do with my appointment is to get closer to the people that matter to us, which is our client estate agents, figure out what they need going forward, and then trying to align Daft to make sure that we're delivering on what they want us to do.
I love that, actually, that getting closer, because one of the things that we do, and we do it not just across social media or across this podcast, we do it kind of with our weekly property roundup that goes out and hits people's inbox every Sunday morning. It looks like it's a one-way conversation, and the very opposite is true. Even this podcast, it's always how we use it almost as a listening mechanism to hear back from the industry. And it's a really important one. So getting closer to industry is a really positive thing. And tools and technologies, particularly social media, has really enabled that. I had the opportunity with some of our team to visit Daft HQ there last week. Really impressive office, by the way. Fantastic office. I recommend anybody who hasn't been in, maybe arrange a coffee chat. It's certainly a good idea. But I was delighted to hear that you personally have visited 165 agents and agents' offices over the past 3 months.
So, I mean, I've been on the road since day one. So I'm with the business about 4 months now. And as part of my role, they wanted me to get closer, figure out what agents needed, and figure out how we can align Daft's values with our clients' values. And my first thought was, well, I need to get out and meet them. I need to find out who these clients are, how they run their businesses, and what can we learn from them. If you think about property, and both you and I are in property a long time, Carol, it's a relationship business. Outside of bricks and mortar, it's how we treat each other, and how the business has moved forward is always about relationships. So what I did and the team did is we went out and we're meeting agents up and down the country from every county in Ireland. And with Daft, we have every single agent or every single county in the country covered. So there's a wide variety of agents, from large to small, from new to old, selling, renting, managing, servicing land, forests, everything in between. And I wanted to get out and meet them and figure out how they use Daft, what their relationship was like with Daft, because mea culpa, the relationship has suffered over the last couple of years. COVID didn't help. Us going remote didn't help. You mentioned our beautiful office in Dublin. We have another one in Wexford, but there's very little people in them now. We had much larger offices during COVID. Now everyone works from home, and it's a different paradigm that we have to get used to. Now, our agent clients are still out there meeting customers on a daily basis and servicing their needs. And we felt as a business, that's what we should do. So we've been out there. I personally have met about 165 agents. Our team on a whole has met north of 400. And every single week, we're meeting more and more agents every week. And we learn something every week. We learn how they fill their pipeline for the upcoming year, how they market their properties, how they deal with technology solutions such as ours and CRMs, and what artificial intelligence means to them. And personally, I like asking them, like, where do they see the future of the industry? Where does pricing fit? Like, how do they manage their team? I'm more interested in like business than just property businesses, because the majority of our clients are entrepreneurs. They're business people. They're hungry to grow. They're hungry. They may be in property because property is their profession and they love it and they're good at it. But learning how they run their business and maybe bringing that back to our business so we can help them align and grow into the future. I think there's a lot of collaboration to be done. I think there's a lot of work that we could do. We have experts in almost every area of business within our four walls in Daft. And what we want to start doing now is learning from our agents so we can use all of that expertise on their behalf. You know, we're a service provider to the agents, and we want to position ourselves as that going forward for the next 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, and I love that you're talking about how to, you know, when you're trying to think about not just the future of that you understand actually it's fully dependent on understanding the challenges that your clients are having, because actually sometimes as an organization grows, that can get lost. And in fact, I see it time and time again, whether it's you know, at a conference or something. There's a tendency to look at the people on the stage, to look at the speakers, and to underestimate the amount of expertise in the crowd. And I think when you're looking at the estate agents nationwide, there's so much expertise locked in every single office in every town and village in Ireland.
It's phenomenal. Yeah. What these businesses have done over the past 20 to 30 years, way before Daft was ever an idea. You know, Daft came along and it, you know, and our competitor was there too. It kind of replaced newspaper industry, like advertising properties. While it still exists in some form, everything moved digitally. We could measure, we could do everything that way. And that's just a way of technology kind of changing an industry. And remaining close to the agents and figuring out, because they are on the ground, they're seeing it first. Now, we have the capability to analyze this data and figure out international best practice and bring it to Ireland so that agents can then use that for their own means to grow their own business. But being close to agents is really, really, really important. And we're learning more by talking to our agents than we ever could by researching, by trying to figure it out on our own. And that's been one of the most valuable things we picked up over the last couple of weeks. So back to my appointment as a client partnership director, it really is that. It's to position us as a partner to the agents. The agents know how to run their business. They know how to do their job. And what they want from a provider like Daft is help them do their job better and then move the industry forward for us to stay ahead of technology trends. And I know we're going to get into that because a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about today was brought up to me on the road by agents who are seeing it everywhere, who are studying the markets in Ireland and beyond, and then saying, how does this fit? Now, we have the wherewithal and the technical capacity to bring some of these dreams to reality. And that's what we hope to do over the next 10 to 20 years. To keep Daft relevant, we need to service the agents and do exactly what they need us to do.
Emmet, you and your team have had the opportunity to speak to in excess of 400 agents over the last 3 months. I mean, that's the kind of thing that we love to do, but we just don't get to do it on that level, at that scale at all. So first of all, what are estate agents around the country worried about in 2023 and as we head into 2024?
It's funny when you start to ask those sort of questions. Once we get over the initial things, it's like, okay, they have staffing issues, they have cost issues. These are just normal business issues that are always going to happen. And when you dig down a little deeper, it's stock. Okay, so you have regulation, you have staffing issues, you have interest rates, but it's stock. And I don't mean it for stock that they can sell. It's stock that people can buy. Like when they're worried about their clients and they're worried about the people coming to them to buy properties, because we did a huge analysis on how agents would win their next instruction, you know, and it's typically a person has done business with that agent before. So an agent is selling a property to someone and they'll maintain that relationship over a large number of years, and then they'll sell that property again. And stock levels in secondhand properties has declined massively. You know, the latest staff report, I think it puts it at like 20% less stock in the market this year, secondhand. Now, new properties have started to fill that hole. And the acceleration of new properties being building all over the country is welcomed by everybody in the industry. But in order for the industry to keep churning, we need that stock level to keep going. Like, the demand is still really, really high, but stock levels are low. Agents are really good at filling their pipelines for the upcoming quarter and the upcoming year. They're working on their relationships. They have people coming in that are thinking of selling, and now they want to execute, and they're taking advice from their agent on when to do it. With stock levels decreasing, agents are finding it harder and harder to fill those pipelines. And now they're looking to figure out, what will the future hold? So if you were to ask me if there was one thing they're worried about, it's the instructions for the upcoming quarter, for the upcoming year. Where are they going to come from, and how are they going to fill their windows and their accounts with properties to sell next year? They're experts at selling property. The market is really hot right now. So getting the best price for a property, they're being helped by such a strong industry. But getting properties put on the market and keep the industry moving around is a real problem.
Look, that doesn't surprise me at all to hear that the stock is the number one challenge that they have, because actually we hear it time and time again when we're speaking to estate agents around the country. And what we've seen, like, yes, as you've commented there, new homes delivery is starting to expand outside of the main urban centres, but it's still only happening really in large market towns and regional areas. So actually there's still huge parts of the country that hadn't seen any development in terms of new homes other than the one-off, which doesn't tend to
building
come through the estate
building
agents.
costs are really handicapping that at the moment. It's just like, you get beautiful towns in rural Ireland where anybody would love to buy a house, especially with this post-COVID world where we can work remotely. You get a job that's paying a city wage, and you can live in a beautiful rural town, but there are no new properties because builders can't build them. The margin is not there. Land prices, and then building costs and labor shortages in construction is just completely killed that market. Now we're starting to see some of the larger building companies, the Cairn, the Glenveaghs, they're starting to look beyond Dublin, beyond the large commuter towns. They're looking at land banks, but there's a lot to go there, and that's a 5-10 year timeline.
Yeah, and that's the new home. So we know the restrictions there, but in a way there's a slightly more, I don't want to say predictable, but maybe a pipeline, a future pipeline that can be forecast for estate agents. They know when there's development in the area, so they know when that's likely to come on stream, and chances are they may have been involved in the deal in terms of the development land, so they're well in the know about that. For secondhand properties, what we're hearing is that inquiries are coming in from people who are considering selling their home, but actually most of those can only do it if they can be sure that they'll be able to buy the home that they want. And that's a huge problem at the moment. I love that you're taking the approach here, how will agents win their next instruction? But in practical terms, what can agents do to fortify that pipeline? They can't magic up homes. Like, what's within their control?
Well, that's it exactly. I mean, there's not a lot can be done. You can't magic homes out of thin air. Like, agents are doing what they've always done. They've worked on their relationships. They've worked on their relationships. They've worked on their own marketing, their own brand building, so that they're very recognized in markets. But outside of just taking homes out of thin air, it's going to be a very difficult time for agents in the coming years. We've often, if you do an analysis of the market over the last 20 years, there have been dips and troughs in terms of stock levels rising and lowering, and different things will bring more stock to the market. If the house prices keep going up, you're going to have people that want to sell. Interest rates go down. There's different ways investors can come in and buy property or sell property. But outside of that, I mean, agents can only look after what they can look after. And like us here at Daft, we can't build houses either, or the stock is there. The demand is just really high, and it's just not moving at the moment.
How is this impacting, say, the business of a estate agency? So these are market realities that estate agents have no control over, or very little control over. So how are they responding to that into how they are running their business? What kind of streamlining? Because we saw this huge jump to tech adoption during COVID, and as somebody who was really beating that drum years earlier, it was almost frustrating to see how quickly they jumped on it when they didn't do it 5 years earlier when the technology was coming on stream. But, in any event, COVID has been a fantastic enabler and driver of tech adoption across estate agency and indeed their clients. So that's a really important thing. But, in terms of how estate agents are running their business, the 400 odd estate agencies that you and the team visited over the last 3 months, what does their technology stack look like? In 2023, for a contemporary estate agent, not necessarily best in class or using all the available tools, but say on average, a good estate agency, what does their technology stack look like?
Well, I think that hasn't changed dramatically in the last little while. I think with all technology changes, we always hear about the really high level stuff like the chat GPTs and blockchain and Internet of Things. And we think it'll be a whirlwind of change instantaneously. And it never really is. I mean, social media aside, that was in everyone's life almost immediately. But if you look at estate agents are now utilizing social media more than they've ever had. And social media has been around for 15, 16 years, maybe longer, Now estate agencies are starting to use it to build their brand, maybe release themselves from a little over reliance on maybe 1 or 2 property listing portals like our own, and asking them, and they're telling me, they're like, I need to build my own brand. I'm using Instagram, I'm using TikTok, I'm using Facebook. The likes of blockchain, the like of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, big data, all this type of stuff, this incrementally starts to get into estate agency life. So a typical tech stack of an estate agent would be, they have an email system, they may have a LinkedIn brand, they may have an Instagram page, they may started using TikTok, they'll have a CRM, they may have building management system logins if they're doing a lot of property management. They'll have feeds that list their properties automatically for them on their own website or maybe via a franchise network. And outside of that, then it's a smartphone and it's just beating the street. I mean, nothing beats that. It still is a relationship business. And while tech can facilitate how agents do their business, it's down to relationships and how they manage that. Now, they're using tech in innovative ways to market their vendors' properties effectively. And that's proven really, really powerful, really, really powerful, getting leads from different sources, but also increasing their brand awareness around the internet so that people know if they come to a certain town, that's the agent I want to sell to. Mm-hmm. And I think tech and big tech and new tech has a role to play. Where that role is yet, it'll be driven by agents. It'll be driven by making their job easier, faster, more profitable, better for their clients, achieving better value for their properties, marketing their properties like virtual walkthroughs and all this type of stuff. That's all incrementally changing. I mean, if you look at an estate agent 25 years ago and you look at an estate agent now, the fundamentals are the same, but the amount of tech they use is completely changed. But that happens slowly. I mean, email came in and then CRMs came in. And then like you have your finance systems, your invoicing systems, you have, systems for keeping account of your PRSA agreement and your regulations. I mean, sometimes you just can't stop the wave of tech. And I think it's important for agents to realize what tech helps them grow their business and what tech doesn't,
That's a really good point about what helps and what doesn't, because look, one of the things we know, and I've been guilty of it myself, there's some exciting tech that's cool, that's novelty. It's definitely not the priority if you've got limited resources. But just some of the really important things, and maybe some of the things that I observe when I'm speaking to estate agents, is that actually, yes, they have their CRMs and yes, they have their accounting practices. Sometimes those two systems don't talk to each other. And that's the one thing we learned during COVID when people weren't able to physically access. It was one of the things that we actually needed to get letters to be able to drive through the checkpoints at during COVID when we were in the 2K and 5K restrictions, because actually what we discovered that even estate agents with good CRM systems and with good account systems, those two systems couldn't talk to each other.
Do you know what we're hearing as well, Karen? Just on that point, it's like we listed off like a typical tech stack for an estate agency, but like, who has all the time for doing all of that? You know?
Yeah, but you shouldn't. It shouldn't come down to time. Actually, I think one of the things that has really moved on since 2016, 2017 is integrations. There's no more standalone. There's no more standalone. And
there isn't, but there is a time commitment to, I mean, just running a successful growing business. It doesn't matter if it's a property related business or anything else. Like, you need this tech. You need this to stay ahead of the regulations, to ensure that, you know, your customer service is up to point, that your own business is running smoothly. So there is a time commitment.
Yeah.
And I find, you know, successful agents are finding that time, or they're delegating, you know, specific hours that they pay for in their employment to get that tech done. But, you know, it's still a struggle for, say, the one woman person, or, you know, a one man band down the country. It's like, I have to do all of that, and I have to act in the best interest of my client when I'm selling their property. So, you know, I can see the challenges firsthand. And it's easy to look at large businesses in Dublin who are doing well, but once you get out into the rural, into the countryside, how they run their businesses are completely different. They're wearing every hat at the same time. Now, it's a typical entrepreneur's dilemma. As we both know, you wear every single hat. You're the head of marketing, you're the head of tech, you're the CEO, you're the finance person. So like, agents are doing that. And at the same time, they're struggling with stock levels and worrying about the future. Like, they should be held up as, like, if you're ever doing a business class, bring one of these entrepreneurs in and say, look, this is how you run a business successfully for 20 years without the resources of like a large, you know, profitable business where you can delegate each of those tasks to an individual person. It really is admirable, you know.
But is it fair to say that I think in terms of the regulations and compliance, that actually it has become more onerous over the past decade? So actually, there's more involved in regulatory compliance.
But now there's the offset. So the tech has really facilitated the growth of the industry, and people that engage it and get to grips with it quickly do gain a significant advantage. But the administrative burden has definitely increased. Definitely.
Emmet, I'm surprised that when we were talking about the tech stack, that online bidding didn't come up, because, like, you know, I know we're talking about, on one hand, compliance, and that's definitely driving a more streamlined process. The other you touched on there was around customer service, because you're absolutely right. And by the way, sometimes I've had to have estate agents remind me when I'm down a tech and prop tech rabbit hole that actually it is still a people business. But I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. In fact, I think the new demographic of property consumer, whether they're buying, selling, renting, investing, whatever it is they're doing, property consumers are consumers in their everyday life. They are used to a better level of service. And by better, I mean, you know, a good user experience of the online process or the offline process if they're visiting your office or trying to phone. In terms of bidding on properties, you know, they want that level of transparency. They want that level of accountability. They want it to be easy. They're not able to take calls necessarily during the day. They just want a different experience. And by the way, I don't know how you feel about this, but I know that estate agents during COVID particularly transitioned to group WhatsApp groups of bidders on properties, and that's how they ensured transparency. I think from a GDPR point of view, that's a real problem.
It's shaky ground. But let's get into the online bidding arena for a minute. So it was heralded as a great tech innovation, and if you look at the demographic of people buying property at the moment, they're young, they're tech savvy, they know how to do it, and they can do anything they want at any time, night or day. So why can't they bid on a property? Okay, that's a fair argument. Now, if you look at the estate agent side of things, how do estate agents win their next instruction? They get to know people. They work with them. So for the analysis we've done, for every 5 people interested in a property, at least 4 of them are selling a property. You know, maybe 1, 2 are first-time buyers, but the rest of them are selling property. So you need to get to know them in order to win their instruction to fill your pipeline. So savvy estate agents know that. Now, they need the tools. And there's a bunch of really useful tools out there. Daft has its own tool, has its own online bidding one, and it's available to all of our agents. But there are other ones out there too. Now, what's holding them back is the relationship side of things. While a young, tech-savvy bidder may want that transparency, they may want to put in their bids, and even a vendor who's selling the property may want to see them all. While the estate agent, if they want to maximize the value of that property, they want to get their hands around that bidder, tell them why this is a good property, here's the interest in it, and work their magic to get the best price for that property. So there's a little bit of a competing interest situation going on here, where the agent is acting for their client, they're acting for their business, and the client thinks they want just everything transparent, but what the client really wants is the most amount of money for their property. And it may sell much, much faster using an online bidding tool, where the agent's like, slow it down, let's get this sold, let's get the maximum value. And that's the value in hiring somebody that knows what they're doing. And it goes competing to what we're building. I mean, we're building tech. We believe everything can be done from a computer in Dublin, where that's not necessarily a fact at all.
No, and look, I do take on board what you're saying, and I feel like there's a bit of a push-pull here. However, I don't think that tech and relationship are opposite ends of the spectrum. I think that actually, if we do UX and user experience really well with our tech, it can increase the trust. It can improve the relationship. What you're saying, genuine, what you're saying is what estate agents say to me, and I try to convince them.
I agree
that it should be both.
If you look at the tech trends over the last 20 years, when something was introduced, it's never right. It's never perfect. It always takes a little bit of a journey to actually meet with the real world and then really facilitate what people need it to do. And that's almost every tech trend. You introduce something, you say, this is the problem it's trying to solve. And then the competing interest goes in, but it doesn't do this effectively for me, or it's weak in this point. And then it takes a couple of iterations, a couple of years, feedback from both sides, and then eventually tech and the real world mesh together to improve the service for everybody involved. And I think that's really the journey of any piece of tech, and specifically in property too.
Actually, that's really well articulated. And I think that maybe is a founder's issue, that they don't talk about that enough, that actually when you bring a new technology to the market, it isn't going to be perfect, and actually it requires the input. And this is where this whole communications as a two-way street really needs to happen, that actually that refinement, that iteration is needed to make it really, to get that product market fit. And I think a process.
Yeah, I think it's a process. So if we talk about tech, if we get onto tech, like there's some great stuff out there, like AI, immersive technologies. I made a list here: big data, property management software, blockchain, listing platforms, drones, data security. Often with tech and traditional industries, and there are no more traditional industries than property, is that people can be a little bit afraid of where is it going to bring the industry. Now, it's not going to replace the industry. It's not going to change the industry fundamentally from its core. But when worked with the industry, it can definitely facilitate positive change and growth. And if you look at, say, developing countries with a developing property marketplace, they lag some way behind. Now, we've a long way to go. For me, from a legal background, we've a long way to go in terms of speeding up the process of buying and selling homes. Advertising and buying and selling stuff is really quite simple now, and is really well facilitated by tech. There's a lot of stuff to go on in the background, but I believe tech will play a role in that. We just have to embrace it and make sure we do it correctly,
Actually, just one point on that, while we don't have time to get into it today, obviously there has been a bill to cut conveyancing delays by hopefully up to 50%, is currently making its way through the House. So actually that's something we will definitely be talking about
for sure.
In recent weeks. And I think it's really important. And by the way, I think as that bill is going through, it's a really good time for us maybe to talk about, and again, it mightn't be for today, but certainly in future episodes, I'd love to talk about cash flow for estate agents, because this booking deposit, contract deposit system, being so vulnerable to the delays in conveyancing, is killing estate agents' cash flow in a way that they really don't have control over, but that this is a solvable problem. This is a policy fix that's needed, but actually estate agents need to come together, and whether it's through the IPAV or the SESI, they need to really use their voice to get the policy changes required, because the cash flow of a state agency is still a problem. And
I think I think for when we do discuss this, I think there's some great international examples about how that problem can be solved.
Actually, Emmet, speaking about that, and I know we're limited in time today, so we don't have a huge amount of time to get into it, but that's part of the work of Daft.ie that I wasn't aware of, but I'm fascinated by it. Talk to me about maybe the research you're doing in terms of understanding international best practice and how we can feed that back into actionable insights for estate agents right across the country.
So if you think about Daft's business model, it was to make buying and selling easier for everyone. Okay. Mm-hmm. And with that mantra in mind, we have the wherewithal to get out into the international market and see how things are done internationally. Ireland is still held up as a really good place to do business with really smart people doing business in there, but you can always learn internationally. So what we've done over the last couple of months and years is we've always looked to how other marketplaces have done it. And what we're doing now is we're bringing those learnings back, and we're going to disseminate them out to our clients and say, look, this is how it's done. Mm-hmm. Not that we would have any interest in changing it with them, but what we're saying is this is what we've learned. And if there's something we can do to help, we will. But I mean, the change is going to come, like you said, from the industry bodies, from the agents themselves. But as Daft is an important player in the market, we like to stay ahead of these trends. We like to figure out where they're coming from. And agents have asked me, agents are running busy practices with staff and stock and everything else. And what we have is the capability to find these good practices, good systems, and then show them to the guys and say, look, this is what others are doing. Do you think that can be introduced? Can we help in any way?
Emmet, you know what? I think in true typical fashion, because obviously you and I have had previous interviews we both come up through law and property and prop tech. And so we've had a lot of overlapping interests over the last number of years. And in typical fashion, we have a limited amount of time today to talk about something, and we didn't talk about it. And that is just before we finish up to let our listeners know about something that I'm genuinely so excited about. We've tried to do it through iPropertyRadio in the past. We've done it for PropTech series and summer series, but we love getting out of the office. We love getting out in location, and we're going to do that over the next 12 months. We're going to be visiting estate agents around the country, and iPropertyRadio, the Property Roundup, is going to be recorded in the offices of estate agents. Whoever will let us in the door, contact us if that's something you're interested in. But we will be going out on the ground, meeting people right across Ireland, meeting estate agents, understanding about, what kind of buyer and seller are they seeing at the moment. We want to know what the estate agents' concerns are for the 12 months ahead, but also what are the concerns of their buyers, their sellers, their investors. I'm really curious to learn if there's any town in Ireland seeing an increase in buy-to-let investors, because unfortunately we're only ever hearing the opposite about people leaving that particular sector. I'm really curious to understand what's happening at a local level, because again, we have seen pockets of new building. We've seen pockets of affordable homes coming to the market in counties across Ireland. Really excited to understand how that's going to impact the dynamic of the local marketplaces, particularly in more rural towns. So over the next 12 months, we're going to be doing that. And once a month, Emmet, you're going to be joining me on air to do that. And to meet with the agents.
Carol, I will. And I think some of the most interesting things that I've learned so far is being in those offices and talking to agents, like how they run their businesses, how they win instructions. Like some of them are so innovative, like how they're filling their pipeline for 2024, how they're going to grow their business, and getting out into their offices, asking them and having them tell the audience, this is how I'm going to do it. I think it'll be invaluable for anybody listening. And for me, it's the most interesting part of it. How these entrepreneurs are going to grow their business and grow their revenue and bottom line next year. I mean, that stuff is priceless.
Look, it is priceless. And I think what is really good, and I'm really interested to see how how, say, for example, your product innovation team in Daft will take this on the chin as well. But one of the things, whenever we speak to PropTech founders or to innovators or even those scaling, there's a tendency to think that the tech you're bringing is the solution, the be all and the end all, and that comes down to identifying the problem. And one thing we've seen time and time again over the years is that, yes, you might genuinely have identified a problem, but not all problems deserve to be fixed. Not all problems are priorities that will be resourced to be addressed. And I'm really curious when we speak to estate agents and try to understand maybe the challenges they're having, I'm really curious to see how estate agents on the ground will prioritize the problems, because we know there's lots of problems to be addressed.
Lots of problems. And when you speak to agents about technology problems or solutions, they all have, say, competing interests, not entirely, but a problem to one agent in Ballyhonus or Castlebar or Carrick-on-Shannon may be completely different to somebody in Waterford or Clonmel or Bandon in Cork, or even in Dublin. These problems are totally different. And the challenge we have at Daft is to figure out what problems do lots of people have, which will bring lots of value to our clients, and then resource it effectively. And I mean, one thing that never changes and that we're going to push even further into the new year is we prioritize agents. We prioritize our clients. What do they want? What do they need? And then we build it, and then we have other competing interests. Do we have the expertise to build it? Do we know what we're building? Do we know exactly what they want? Do we need to get out and learn more? And we can always learn more. So, I mean, that's going to be a really interesting phase over the next 12 months, and we can get into it in way more detail. But even in our first interview, when we go out and meet that agent, they'll ask for things and they'll tell us about a problem they have. And that'll be really, really important to them. And if we can find another few people in the industry that have that problem, then it gets onto a Daft technology list and said, let's build that. They want that. Let's do it. I mean, that's what's driven innovation in the industry and in our own business over the last couple of years. What do they want? What does the industry need? And what are the technologies that can make it happen?
I think that's a really compelling call out. So look, I'd put it out to any estate agents listening in today. Let us know your problems, but also let us know if you'd like us to visit you and your team and your offices over the next 12 months. Certainly we'd love it, and we'll make sure that we are visiting as many parts of the country. I have in the past shown a bias for going around the coast of Ireland. I promised to hit some of the Midlands and some of the inner regions over the next 12 months.
That's where some of the best action is happening, Carol. That's some of the best actions happening in the Midlands. These are the people that are really moving the country. It's the engine of Ireland right in the middle.
Do you know what? And I have had a bias for where you can get a good seafood chowder out overlooking the sea. So I promise to overlook that bias and to take a more open-minded approach. But Emmet, thank you so much for being with us today. That's all we've time for today. And again, this is really just the start of a conversation. And I'm really delighted that we're in a position to do this by bringing iPropertyRadio together with Daft.ie to really build what we have started, this really industry listening mechanism. So please send us your feedback. Genuinely, we'd love to hear from you. And again, we have big plans over the next year or two. So those plans will only be successful if everybody gets involved across the industry. So thank you so much for listening in, and we look forward to an exciting partnership with lots of industry chat. And again, it is very much our intention to spark innovation across the industry. My thanks to show producer Katie Tallon and to the production team here at Hear Me Roar Media, and also thanks to our show producer Daft.ie, Ireland's most visited property website. And thank you indeed for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Property Roundup. In the meantime, please be sure to check out all of the other Irish and international real estate and construction shows on iProperty Radio.